Great. Good evening, everybody. Happy New Year. Thank you very much for taking time. This is the first full week back for most of us, so thanks for making time to come tonight. I'm really excited by today's talk. So how many of you are attending a Products That Counts event for the first time tonight? Wow, fantastic. Okay, great. Thanks for being here. So Products That Counts was founded in 2014 by SC Modi. So we have a new hours tonight, so that the timing's a little bit off. But SC Modi was an executive at Facebook and now is a VC in the Valley. And she's a pioneer in products. So she just felt that we were missing a community that brought together innovators and other people in the product space. So I'm really excited that she's grown the chapter here. We have a chapter growing, being introduced in Austin this year and some other locations. So I also want to thank our sponsors. If I go back up, we have Amplitude, mParticle, and of course Zillow, who has graciously provided this space. They provided the dinner. Actually, Nate, do you want to say quick something about Zillow to call you out completely?
Yeah, welcome to Zillow. We're really glad you're here. We love sponsoring and hosting this event. Lots of great speakers, and we really happy you're here. Thanks. We are also hiring lots of jobs. We have recruiters here. If you're interested in a job, please speak with them afterwards. But thank you for coming.
Great, thank you. And so, yeah, we'll take applause and just a quick applause for Nate and to Alex for hosting this. So thank you very much. Great, and then I won't spend much more time. I want to introduce Phillip Hunter. So Phillip is a pioneer in the space of voice, interaction design, user design, and user-centered design. He holds 3 patents and has been instrumental in Alexa, but also Messenger and Cortana as well. And so I'm super excited by this. I have a company of my own, and we have designed for voice, but I have so much I have to learn. So super, super excited to have you here tonight. And I can't think of a better way to kick off the new year than to have you today. So thanks for your time as well.
Thank you. Thanks, Ann. Okay, so I'm Phillip, and so on the original billing, just a point of clarification on the original billing, it listed me in a position that I held until recently. I was VP of product at a startup called Pulse Labs, just a few blocks from here. I left there at the end of November, and now I'm doing some independent work and also doing a little bit of stealth work in a startup of my own. Just a brief history. I started working in speech recognition almost 20 years ago. Back then it was almost exclusively within the domain of the interactive voice response area, which some of you may know as the touchtone robots from hell or agents from hell or things like that. Anytime you had to call your bank or when you used to make phone calls. How many people remember making phone calls? 800 numbers. You might remember this. Hi, Emily. It's nice to see someone I know. Excuse me. So I did that for a long time, and that's I'll get back into that in a little bit about where the technology has and hasn't come from that point. But I got my start there. It's a really interesting space, interesting in that it provided a lot of opportunities for us to learn and experiment. Also interesting in that it was quite soul-sucking. I can't recommend customer service work, customer care, any of that space to anybody. It's a necessary job, but it's hard place to make a living. So I spent a number of years doing that, and then went to, I also worked at a couple of startups, consultancies, et cetera, in there, and then I ended up at Microsoft and was around for the early days of Cortana before it even had a name. And so that was kind of cool. About the same time, Siri came out, and everybody, I remember sort of the building I was in when the announcement came out, there's sort of this collective gasp going around the whole building because we realized that Apple had just leapfrogged us. And but it was still a really cool time. It was just the beginnings of speech recognition becoming something that was going to be more than customer service, more than a novelty. And so Siri, really pioneered that differentiation, but Cortana and of course Alexa and others caught up. I spent a couple of years after Microsoft at AWS. I decided to step out of speech recognition for a little while and get into developer tools and complex systems and things like that, and that was really interesting. Learned a lot there about just a different way to think about scale, equipping hundreds of thousands, millions of developers to build things for all the reasonably good reasons that Amazon gets slammed. AWS is a really interesting place to work because it drives so much innovation and so much growth in technology over the past this is the incredible thing. It's like 11 years old, and we think of AWS, it's huge. It's been around it's 11 years old, which, is also similar to what the iPhone is, right? So it's technology changes fast. Anyway, 2016, I joined Alexa, the Skills Kit specifically, which is equipping third-party developers. So there's a couple of big products that I oversaw the design and creation of the developer portal for building skills, and then the Amazon Blueprints product that came out in the spring of last year. And so then March, I joined the startup focused on usability testing of voice applications. So one of the things we'll get into tonight is what does it mean to have the idea of quality of interaction in a voice product or voice-driven product. And so Pulse Labs was aimed at testing that, and they're still going strong. And I wish the guys best of luck in that. So that's kind of my history. So we're going to get into, I'm calling this voice product creation. We'll talk, this is a huge topic. In fact, I have workshops, 4 and 8 hour workshops developed for this. So we're not going to cover, we're only going to sort of skim the surface of a lot of stuff. We'll go deep on a couple of crucial things. And hopefully for you, if you haven't gotten into this before, it'll be more of something to really get your interests going and then start you on a journey. Well, you're going to need to learn a lot more. And I have a list of resources at the end if you want to do that. So before we start, in earnest, how many of you have worked with speech recognition in some form or fashion? Okay. 5 or 6 of you. Cool. How many of you own a device, whether it's an iPhone or an Alexa or Google device, own something that uses speech recognition? Okay. Before you put your hands down, keep your hand up if you use that on some regular basis, a week, every month. Okay, fair number. Keep your hand up if you like using it. Okay, keep your hand up if no one could pay you to take it away. Okay, only a couple of diehards there. Okay, good. And this, so that's actually one of the genesis points of this talk is why don't we feel differently when that question is asked. So let's get into that. We'll start it off with something really fun. Okay, so anybody not know what this is? Peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I gave this talk in Poland a little over a year ago, and I had to explain what a peanut butter and jelly sandwich is. I should have thought of that, but it didn't occur to me until I was pointing at the slide. I'm like, oh, I bet half of the people in this room of 500 people don't know what a peanut butter and jelly sandwich is. So I gave it in France last year too, and I changed it to croque monsieur. So it works either way. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to grab a neighbor, not literally grab a neighbor, but partner with a neighbor. It doesn't matter if you know them or not, just somebody right next to you. And so I'll give you a few seconds to do that. So find a partner. 1, 2, 3. Okay, raise your hand if you have a partner. Okay, raise your hand if you have a partner. Okay, that's almost everybody. Okay, now, second, one of you is going to be a speech recognition assistant, and the other is going to be a real person. Okay, so a few more seconds, decide who's going to be who. Okay, raise your hand if you've decided. Okay, great. All right, now, the person is going to turn to the speech recognition assistant and say, whether you want to call it Alexa, Google, whatever, tell me how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Okay, you ready? Everybody understand? Alexa, tell me how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. 1, 2, 3, go. Okay, about 10 more seconds. Okay, if you can hear my voice, raise your hand. If you can hear my voice, raise your hands. If you can hear my voice, raise your hands. Okay, very good. All right. All right, so if you were the person, raise your hand if you feel like you would have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich in your hand right now. Oh, that's good. There's progress. The first time I did that, one person was like, everybody else was like, no. So a few of the people who played the person, thoughts. What happened? What worked? What didn't work? What was surprising? Anybody? Oh, we're supposed to, where's my, yeah, there we go. Okay, the mic's going to come around. Anybody want to share their thoughts? Here we go.
Our Alexa lost its connection.
Oh, that's too bad. That is too bad. I hate it when Alexa does that. Like, I don't really want to do this. I'm sorry, I can't kick. No, right now. Yes, right here.
I thought it was very difficult to articulate the way I like to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Maybe different than asking me the question. So
okay.
1 to 3 tablespoons of peanut butter, whatever.
Right. I want a half a pound of jelly, or I want extra thick cut, special bread or something. Yeah. Okay. How about in the back?
I was surprised to hear that the instructions to make sure I had a knife.
The instructions, I'm sorry, I didn't catch.
Make sure I had a knife.
Oh, to make sure, good. So your Alexa gave you equipment requirements as well. That's good. Okay, but this raises a question. Assuming you make peanut butter and jelly, who uses a spoon for the jelly? Okay, so some people use a spoon. Okay, but this is good. Alexa's thinking beyond the slices of bread. Anyone else? I saw one more hand. Yes.
I think the peanut butter and jelly sandwich is something easy to make.
Yeah.
Listening to instructions was really complicated.
Yes. Well, for most of us, it falls into the set of things that has become something we learned culturally as we grew up. And we just assimilated all that knowledge. A lot of it's tacit knowledge. We don't have to think about it too hard, and now we're forced to. So which raises, so now I want to hear from the other side. If you were an Alexa, you were Alexa, right? Oh, no, you were Alexa. Okay. So if you were Alexa, thoughts? What was difficult about this? Yes.
So I was at the reverse, like a programming class where you're telling a computer the instructions to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, that just hurts your brain because if you have a good instructor, they'll make it very, very complicated on how to go through that process. And so in this case, I feel like I got to rely on collective knowledge of a peanut butter and jelly sandwich would make it a lot easier. But like you said, when you gave the talk elsewhere, that's, what is a peanut butter jelly sandwich?
Yeah. Well, and even so how many of you ran into, or how many Alexas decided to say something like, do you have bread? Like, do you actually have bread? Yeah. So a couple of you did that. Because that could be a real thing. Or did any Alexa, so we had one Alexa cop out, couldn't connect to the internet. Did we have any other Alexas who were like, getting Prime now for you? No one did that? Okay, so that's come up before as well. So that's a good segue, that what we're talking about a lot of times is not so much the issue of whether we're understanding the words, it's how do we arrange the information? What all information do we need to include? How do we give that? How do we relay that? And so lots of other things that are, and especially like you said, you said peanut butter jelly sandwich, kind of well understood, but it's hard to explain. But there's a lot of stuff that happens with technological interactions that's not so easy to explain, and we maybe can't rely on some amount of shared context. And what do we do then? Okay, so let's move along. So one of the just a little bit of background. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about what the speech recognition space looks like. I assume everyone here is either in tech or has a healthy interest in it, so you're aware of Alexa and Google and what everybody's doing, and it's CES week and all this kind of stuff. So, but why are we here is sort of interesting. And so we'll talk. Let me just run through this a little bit. So first of all, this is why one of the reasons it's different from what I did like 20 and 25 years ago is cloud computing and high-speed bandwidth for that. Machine learning is a huge thing. I remember when in the early days of Cortana, we weren't quite using machine learning yet, but we were talking about the power of that, and that's absolutely made just an incredible difference today. And then ambient computing, just the idea that, not only are we carrying something around in our pockets that's an amazing computer, but there's stuff around us. There's whether it's an Alexa device or Internet of Things device or whatever, all of this stuff is working together to make the kinds of experiences possible. Even though there's a lot of room for improvement, we wouldn't have even these basic things if this infrastructure and these evolutions in technology weren't happening. Along with ambient computing, there's a rise in intimate technology. So how many of you let someone that you don't know borrow your mobile phone on a regular basis? Nobody. Yeah, but one sort of. So it's, we've gone from the idea of phone as something that belongs to our office or our home to something that belongs to us. I know people who own a speech recognition device, and when other people come over to their home, they prefer to be asked before someone uses their Alexa or uses their Google. Yeah. So, and part of the reason is that when you bring a device that's always listening, even if it's only listening for a few things, into your home, there's an intimacy that goes along with that, an emotional intimacy. This thing is and this is why people are worried about it, who don't really understand or just don't believe that the big companies are telling the right story. So this intimacy is a big thing too that enables us to make these moves. And then connectedness, concurrent modes. So we have things that are voice only. We have bimodal, multimodal, intermodal, cross-modal, everything in between. And we're very accustomed now to information being available on the channel or in the channel we want it to. So just, right now, I came here with a laptop. I had to switch to this one. I put something on a thumb drive. I put it there, or I tried to put it on Google Drive and we couldn't access that, so we put it on a thumb drive. So my bits were all over the place in just the few minutes before I started this presentation. I could have also had it on my phone, et cetera, et cetera. And then we have maturing interactions. So you think, I referenced a few minutes ago, the iPhone came out in 2007. That wasn't really that long ago. Apps started to become a real thing in 2008, 2009. Also not that long ago. But our expectations of what it means to interact with computing have evolved very, very quickly since then. And so not only do we have all the things that we associate with touch, but now we're thinking, we've got crazy things going on with brain interfaces, et cetera, et cetera. And then every time we make advances, that pushes the idea that there will be more advances. So we have these maturing interactions. We may not be good at them, don't get me wrong, but the expectations are maturing. And so this all leads to voice being one of the, or maybe the next big tech pivot, especially in UI. One of the reasons I give this talk is because I think there's a lot of stupid, boring stuff being done today, and CES is a great week to observe a lot of that. I saw Ford and Google announced an integration where you can say, "Hey Google, tell Ford Star to start my truck." I'm like, why? Okay, from the house, I get. I'll grant you that. From the house, I'll grant you that. But a lot of us, especially if you are a parent, when you're getting into a car, you're like putting a bunch of shit in there. Putting a bunch of stuff in there, and you've got your kids, and you're trying to get them buckled up. The last thing you want to have to do is remember like a 6 or 7 word mouthful to get the car started. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't come in handy. Trust me, I use my smart home stuff all the time, and I love being able to turn lights on, especially at night. I'll be in the kitchen. I'm headed to the bedroom, and I want to turn all the lights out here, and I want to turn the lights on down the hall. So I have my path guided, right? So convenience is a thing, and I love it as much as anyone else. But that doesn't mean that everything needs to be, made voice enabled. So let's talk about now let's start to look at what does need to be. We're gonna focus on a couple of different products. So we've talked about Google already, so this is the Home Hub, similar to the Echo Show from Alexa. Up there is the Jeopardy skill. Is anyone not familiar with the game show Jeopardy from TV? It's been on TV for years and years. Okay, great. The next one over is Bamboo. So Bamboo Learning is a startup in the Seattle area from an ex-Amazon executive focused on education. And then down in the other corner is the Scully motorcycle helmet, and that's an exploded view. It's the best picture I could find, sadly. But anyway, it's got a heads-up display. It's got voice recognition in it. A lot of cool stuff. So I picked these as examples of products that, to me, now I don't ride motorcycles, so I haven't tested that, but everything I could find online seems to indicate that that's a really, really cool thing. And the way they've combined it all is the reason I put this in here. But all of these fit a set of things that I think have the potential to make good products that use speech recognition as one of the interfaces to it. So as I said already, one of the problems we have right now is that a lot of voice interfaces they're either novelty or they're people who are just experimenting, but they're putting their stuff out there and they just leave it there. And there's experiments where people are trying different things, but they may not, they're not necessarily serious about taking it somewhere. And I think that this means that we have a huge, huge opportunity to think about voice interfaces within products, within apps, and within physical devices as first-class digital products, and say, what does that mean for us? And what are people used to? What are their expectations? We have high expectations of apps today. We have high expectations of how we interact with websites, with other online products. And we need, at some point, the market will mature to the point that people have those same expectations around voice, and they won't settle for things that don't meet those expectations. At least that's my hope. So what does that look like? From my perspective, and this is not, I'm going to add a couple of things to this for voice, but I think in general, good products have a clarity of purpose. You know what they're supposed to do. They have a non-trivial, uncommon benefit. Doesn't apply to all commodities, of course, but it means something there that you get from that product that is not as easy to get from somewhere else. Comfortable interaction goes without saying. Consequential content. So if it's not just filler if it has content, but it means something to me. This is actually one of my complaints right now about the Alexa Echo Show. It has this scrolling display of headlines, and I'm just like, every day I'm just sick of them, and I'm tempted to turn it off, but my girlfriend won't let me. So and then engaging emotions. So why make me care, make me want to keep interacting with it. And then some sort of gratification, some sort of payoff feeling of, hey, this did what I wanted, or I got what I wanted, or something. So this is a list I use of just general characteristics of a good product. Now, so now we're going to get into a little bit of how do we get here, and what's the difference for voice interfaces? If you're going to add a voice interface, what changes or gets added to this list? So a couple of things that I use. So I've done a lot of UX and product strategy over the years, and I'm just going to reference a couple of quick things that I use even with voice. And they'll seem super simple, and if you're in the design UX field or your design field, you'll recognize this one. But basically, just looking at it from a user-centered perspective. What matters? What's the need? Why does someone need this? When do they need it? Like, is it something they'll use every day, once a week? Where will they use it? How will they use it? And then out of the ways that we answer those questions, what can and should we as a business choose to do about that? How should we choose to go about answering these questions, or which ones of these questions or the answers to these questions should we select to create a product out of? There's something similar from a strategist named Roger Martin, he's an academic and spent a lot of time in business. This is sort of a higher level business strategy set of questions about what are our aspirations and goals as a company. So thinking about what do people want, but now thinking about who do we want to be as a company? What do we want to be involved in? And so what are our aspirations and goals? What are we trying to achieve? Are we going to be a huge company? Are we going to be a little company? Where do we want to play? What part of the markets are we going to participate in and compete in? And then since most of us, if we're in business, we're in it to win it. How will we choose to do that? What is our path to finding out how to win? And in order to do that, what capabilities do we need? So I put these two slides together just as a quick backdrop of, I'm not giving just a talk about like voice UI and how to design well. I'll get to some of those elements too, but it's also about taking a step back and saying, what is my product? And the people that I think that I'm going to reach, or I think that are going to buy this, what are they interested in? Who are they? Where do they operate? Why do they do these things? And so these are crucial starting points before you say, how are we going to design something? Who's going to build it, et cetera, et cetera. And so let's take a quick look back at our 4 products and understand where some of these starting points are. So for Jeopardy is an established brand. I can't remember exactly when the show started, but it's decades old. I think 70s, early 80s, something like that. It's been around for a long, long time. And it's really, really loved. People are super loyal to it. So Jeopardy, Sony, who owns the brand, they've wanted for years to extend the real gameplay to their loyal fans. Now they have an app. It's multiple choice. You can go play it on the web too. It's multiple choice. It doesn't feel at all like the game. You see all the answers. You don't have to phrase it as questions. You just click. It's not like the game at all. So they finally saw their chance with today's voice-based devices to really extend the show. I'll kind of give the spoiler right here. The highest play time is immediately following the day's episode. Immediately following it. So and Alexa, start Jeopardy. And I'll get to a few more details about that. But it was super successful. They were super happy about that. Bamboo, and a big thing there, just to emphasize, is the interaction is nearly identical to the show. There's not a hologram of Alex Trebek showing up in your living room, although maybe that's next. Right, exactly. Yes, but it's very, very similar to the show. Bamboo Learning took the idea of what does the in-home educational experience look like, especially for younger kids. And so if you start playing this, Alexa is saying to you, what's 2 + 1? Are you ready for the next one? Yes. What's 3 + 4? 7. Are you ready for Great. Are you ready for the next one? So this is something, if you're a parent, you do this with your kid as long as they're old enough. And so they modeled it on that and therefore, said, we want to take our inspiration from something that's already happening. Same thing with Jeopardy. This already happens. How do we enable it to happen maybe more often or more reliably, or let the parent be the observer some of the time, et cetera. But again, very much taking the familiar and saying, how do we replicate that? Now the Google Home Hub is a little different in that this is more of a combinatorial strategy. So thinking about the idea of how do we help at home? People, a lot of people cook regularly still. The kitchen is a communal space, so this becomes the hub and the Echo Show become a little bit more of a communal experience rather than a one-on-one experience. And then just general online life. A lot of us use online, we search for recipes online, or we search for, other things to do that we enjoy, that we might enjoy standing around and sharing on this screen. And then lastly, any motorcycle riders in here? One? Okay. Do you ride frequently? Okay. I've never ridden, but I know a bunch of motorcycle riders, and motorcycle riders are a really passionate bunch. They choose this. They know it's very different. They know they could be snuggle up and safe in a car with their music blasted, and they're like, no, I'm on the road. It's me in the road. And so Scully is taking this, but any X-Files fans, I just love the name Scully. It's just so cool. So a very loved experience is saying, how do we increase safety and add power to that? So also a magical combination of things, of saying, we want to have the baseline of a nice looking, safe helmet, and then we want to, give more information, more power. So these are the kinds of things that might come from our strategic questions, our investigative user research, market research, all of those sorts of things. And I'm emphasizing this because no matter where you're going to go in the end with your voice interaction, with the voice interface, you have to know what you're starting with, why you're starting there. And to me, this is one of the biggest, this line alone is one of the biggest things that's missing in a lot of things that are being put out there for voice right now. And I mean that in two ways. One is that the things that get put out there just clearly just don't have a very solid answer right there. And there's a lot of stuff that's not getting built that I think the answers are fairly, well, at least in my point of view, fairly easy to find or imagine or go search for. And so I think a lot of the wrong things are getting built, and I think a lot of the right things aren't getting built. It's a dual problem out there. one of the words I haven't said up until this point, but I'll say it now, is the word conversational. How many of you have heard the word conversational applied to speech recognition systems? How many of you believe that any speech recognition system is conversational? Oh, good. Google's getting there in the system. Yes, I agree with you in the system sense, and certainly their what was the crazy thing they showed? The what? Duplex. Yes, thank you. It seems like it's like almost right there. There's a lot of sort of smoke and mirrors there, but it feels conversational. But what the reason I'm saying this is twofold. One is there's a lot of ways in which we're nowhere close to being truly conversational. And the basic reason is conversation is such a rich, the meaning of that word is so rich. There's so many things that are conversational and that we do as humans. The other reason I say that is because you can actually have a good voice interface, a really well-designed, effective voice interface that only follows some basic rules of conversation and breaks a lot of other ones, or bends them at least. And that's for good reason. And it's sort of easy to think about when you think about, the things you do on your phone. Most of us would probably consider the things we have access to on our phone to be very powerful, very useful. But our vocabulary that we use for interacting with that phone is actually really small. And so we can do the same thing with voice. We can have a rather limited set of interactions, and so we're not really being conversational, but it is a good voice interface. So the reason I mention all that is because there are types of conversations to think about that are useful here. So transactional. I walk up to the counter at Chipotle and place my order. We're having a bit of a conversation. There's a back and forth. If someone doesn't understand me, they might ask me to correct it or say it again. But in the end, we're really just like, how do I get my bowl and pay and go? Utilitarian. We talked about smart home type stuff. Turn on the lights. Alexa drives me crazy by saying okay every time, but at least I know she did it. But in the person's mind, so taking the customer point of view, what do I want to happen? What's my goal? What's required? Now, these aren't all explicit questions in someone's mind, but if you break down the motivations for the interaction, you get down to questions like these that get answered somehow, some way by the person and by the machine. Informational. What do I want to know? What's the order and structure? The peanut butter and jelly falls into this, right? What do I need? How do I, do I need to tell someone to, get the bread out and lay it down and then get the, all that kind of stuff. And so in someone's head, especially when they're trying to do something more complex, they have these sort of lingering questions. Again, maybe not explicit, but they're there. Like, am I going to be able to understand this? Am I going to be successful? Is it going to be something? How do I know that I've gotten the right thing, et cetera? And then entertainment. What is it that delights me? What keeps me interested? What keeps me coming back? Why do I want to do this again? Why do I want to do it for 10 minutes versus 2 minutes? A number of Alexa skills have been very successful at having 15 and 20-minute long interactions, especially storytelling, adventure-type games. And a big reason for that is the people that build those have spent a lot of time understanding. And this goes into if any of you are anyone in games, game design, game build, anything. But this is a big element in games, right? So if you go out and read about game design, it's all about story arc and multiple paths and how do you keep things just frustrating enough to make it feel like a challenge, but not so much that somebody wants to give up. Game UX is a fascinating thing to study because almost everything that we think about as UX designers doesn't hold true for games. Make it easy. No, make it a little hard. All that kind of stuff. Then coming education. What do I need to learn? What helps me? How do I know I'm learning the right things? This is a big thing. You think, as if you're a parent or if you're a teacher, if you think about your parents or your teachers who helped you learn stuff, how do they know what to teach me? How do they know what I was supposed to know? And so when you're thinking about, if you think about this from a child standpoint, maybe a kid is old enough to articulate, I need to learn, but they don't really by definition, they don't know what they need to learn because otherwise they would have learned it already. So, so customer points of view get really important here. And we already see some evidence. Alexa's been out for a little over 4 years now. Google's been out for a while. A bunch of other stuff, research. So sorry, I had to switch from Keynote to PowerPoint, and this slide escaped my attention. It should be formatted a little bit better. But so learning, control the home, communicate, shop, listen to music. These are the things that are popular right now. A lot of this gets done. Shopping is really light. People don't buy a lot of stuff, but there's still some of that happens. Getting news, finding out the weather, et cetera, et cetera. And so, thinking about those customer points of view, a lot of this stuff is kind of, it's very everyday, right? Like this is just normal life. And so it's natural that people have tried these sorts of things fairly early on. And some of them are super easy. Like you can get you can listen to 6 or 7 different music services on Alexa now. So it works and they come back for it. And so these things are starting to develop habits. What I'd like to see is this breaking out beyond these sorts of things, but we can take inspiration and learning from these things. And so let's look at where that brings us in terms of customer points of view. With Jeopardy, it's a very simple, I want to play the game. I want to play it. So rather than just yelling at my TV or having a guessing match with my roommate or my significant other, I actually want to play the game. And you get to keep score, and you can, over time, you can amass points and get rewards, et cetera. Bamboo, let me oversee my kids' learning. If I'm not around, or if I need to be busy with something else, my kid can do those same sorts of exercises with Bamboo that I would do with them. And now, like, it just makes more stuff possible. Google, let me bring together some familiar elements. Like maybe I have a tablet, or I've looked up recipes for 10 years on my phone, or we love to do little trivia things. So one of the things we do at home sometimes is, we'll think of funny questions, and we'll just sit around and ask Alexa and see what comes. Sometimes we'll just want to see what happens, and so so it's bringing together multiple things that I already know and packaging it in a way that's, where the sum of the elements or the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And then with motorcycle riding, give me more information, more control. Let me know, before I hit bad traffic, I want to know. Or if I, need to turn down the music, don't make me fumble for a control on something. Let me just issue a voice command, et cetera. So this leads to takeaway number 1. So products use voice well when it offers something that's not really present right now. Now, it may be in some form, but it offers it in a way where there's a detectable difference that also falls into the better category. So better, different, and better. How many of you are in product management or design? Oh, almost everybody. Okay. So this middle one is kind of obvious to you, but it's still not, in the greater technology world. But you need to have real customers. So there's a lot of stuff that's getting built for voice right now that's just like, I had a good idea, I built it, maybe people use it, why aren't they using it? Well, maybe you didn't think about actual people when you were building it. Or, you're using it and that's who you built it for, so you win. And then offering significant benefits. So one of the, all of you in product and UX, you've probably heard usable, useful, desirable as a little sort of a mantra. Over the past few years, and I didn't originate this, but one of my responses to that is, let me ask you, if you equate usable with the term edible, how many of you take recommendations from friends for restaurants where they say, the food was really edible? I mean, I just found it so easy to eat. You'd be like, it's not the recommendation I'm looking for. So faster, easier, more enjoyable starts to me to get to the next level of that. And so I'll tell a little story here of how many of you ride the bus, King County Metro Transit? Yes. So there's an app called One Bus Away. Anybody use it? Yeah, okay. There's a skill for one bus away. Now, I used the app for a long time, and then in 2015, I learned about the skill, and I installed it. It's a really basic skill, sadly. You only program it for one stop, so it kind of makes sense that if you're at home and you're using this, you're going to set it up for the stop that you catch the bus at presumably in the morning when you're going to work. But as soon as I started using, and one of the things it does is it'll read all the buses. So you'll say, after you set it up, you can say, open one bus away, and it'll immediately say, so I ride the 70. Bus number 70 arrives in 4 minutes, 7 minutes, 9 minutes, 12 minutes, 16 minutes, 27 minutes according to schedule. I'm like, what? But I learned how to listen for just the first couple, and then I would tell Alexa to stop the rest. But here's what it did for me. I realized that every morning, my phone's over there, so I'll just have to pretend. Every morning, I'm running around getting ready, and all of a sudden I need to think about the bus. Stop. Do I have my phone? No. Where's my phone? Go find my phone. Unlock it. Scroll. There's that. Open the app. Wait. Open. It's on the wrong screen. Back screen. Okay. There's the bus. And then I see the list. So that would take me like a minute. Maybe I'm just slow, but it would take me about a minute to do all that. And here's the most important thing. I was dead stopped. I was doing nothing else. And all of a sudden, the skill, once I had it set up, let me find out the information I need in 10 seconds without stopping moving. This was a game changer in my morning. Maybe I just have sort of low standards, but it really made a significant difference to go from a minute or so down to about 10 seconds. And I could keep going. I didn't have to find my phone, or I didn't have to stop dead in my tracks so I wouldn't run into something. And so it's not a great design. It's not a great UX, but it's really fast. It's really easy, and that makes it more enjoyable in a sense. And so those are the sorts of things that I think these are the characteristics I think we should be aiming for. Okay, how am I doing on time? I feel like I need to move ahead. Okay, all right. All right, sorry. Let's talk about some of the aspects of the actual UI that are tough. So think about getting this text message. I really need to see you. 6 words from someone that you're fond of, maybe a significant other. Feels pretty good. You've got this emoji attached to it. You're like, it's going to be a good evening. I'm looking forward to this. Now, imagine getting this in an email from your manager. What went wrong? What did I break? Who's in trouble? Is it me? Etc. Not the same emotional energy. Imagine getting it in a voicemail from your doctor. Your whole world might be screeching to a stop. Same exact words. This is, in a nutshell, what's one of the reasons doing voice recognition systems, conversational systems, is so difficult, because the amplitude and of meaning can swing so wildly depending on context. And so when we apply that to all the different things that Alexa or Google can handle, we start to realize that this isn't just about recognizing 6 words. It's about all the other things that were happening to produce those 6 words. So challenges here: meaning, like we were just saying, clarity. What does I really need to see you when it comes from your boss? Is this going to be good news, bad news? Distraction. We are, as we all probably know about ourselves, we are very easily distractible. And Alexa doesn't know that. We have great ways to pick that up in one-on-one, eye-to-eye conversation. But when we're talking to someone on the phone, we can sometimes tell, but Google has no clue. And then this whole idea that speech is a zero or no UI interface is just bogus. Language itself is an interface. It's how we exchange things. So what does this mean in terms of these products? So some very specific choices about how do we minimize those challenges and maximize the opportunity to exchange meaning. Jeopardy is very short, so only 6 questions. It's pulled from the same content of the day, so it's leftover questions essentially. And so the person who's playing it on the same day is familiar with that. And then there's rewards involved. Bamboo, no special wording or complicated instructions. Hey, are you ready to do some math? Yes. What's 3 plus 1? Just goes into it. No big menus, anything else. Google, as you pointed out a few minutes ago, has a really great, robust set of UI definitions, not just material, but they have a great voice design set of guidelines, et cetera. So a range of voice and touch controls that make sense. And then this helmet, which I want to learn how to ride a motorcycle just so I can buy the helmet. It feels futuristic, but the commands are manageable and easy to understand. Raise the volume, play music, don't stop playing music, show me the heads-up display, et cetera. So here's some guidelines around how we start to achieve these moments of clarity and not overwhelming people and not creating a lot of ambiguity like, I really need to see you. So first of all, real and familiar. So somebody posted something online earlier today about a menu, a room service ordering application, and I listened to it, and it's a couple of years old, so they told me it was updated, but it's just horrible. It's like it totally breaks the whole idea of room service. Like you're looking at a thing, oh yeah, I want the hamburger, fries, call them up, hey, hamburger and fries, yes, I'll take a glass of whatever. Super easy, just like ordering in a restaurant, and all of a sudden it was like 5 questions about food preferences and all this kind of stuff, and it was a lot of words, and just it didn't make any sense, so it broke the familiar. And then be brief. Be friendly, but don't be cute. Cuteness, like Siri, how many people are really attached to Siri still who use it? 1? Okay. So Siri was really fun when it came out, like she was all sassy and all this kind of stuff, but that wore off quickly when there wasn't, for a lot of people, when there wasn't additional benefit. So be really careful with the cute, sassy kind of stuff. Offer just what's needed when it's needed. Like I said, there's a lot of words in that other thing. You really got to watch that. People don't need a lot of explanation. Keep it brief. Encourage and reward spontaneously. So you think you've got your core set of things you're designing for. Make sure you explore some of the edges there so that people can do what they need to do or find out other things. Focus and repair. So one of the things that I would love to go into, or I do go into in my workshops, is the idea of repair. So repair is the idea that we're correcting our conversation. So it could be like, excuse me, I didn't hear you, or pardon me, or what do you mean by blah, blah, blah. Repair is something that happens on average every 84 seconds in human conversation. Basically all the time. If you have a 5-minute conversation, you're going to do it at least 3 times. And it's not like a 2-second thing. It might totally, you might have to circle all the way back around to find out, where are we? And we've all had that conversation of like, can we just start from the beginning? Because I think I got lost somewhere. It's huge. It's tough to build right now in today's systems, but you've got to account for it somehow. Make the computer do the work. The other way to think of it is like people don't want to do math when they're trying to achieve another goal. Don't make them do math. Offer and allow flexible paths to success. There's a lot of menu-driven stuff from the old days of speech recognition. We want to stay away from that and go more towards intent-driven. People can meander toward their goals. Okay, last main slide. Those things I just showed. Like Jeopardy uses the lingo that's already established. There's nothing new. It's also you can't interrupt it in the sense of interrupt. You can't say Alexa blah blah blah, but you can pause the game is what I mean. You can do it, come back later. Bamboo it starts very simple and it's very quick turns. And I don't mean like speedy things, but just like minimal words back and forth. I already mentioned that Google has really strict UI guidelines of emphasizing efficiency and clarity. And then with the helmet, everything about that is just limited to the motorcycle. So it's not like you're going to, call up all this other stuff that doesn't have to do with riding a motorcycle. So making very specific product UI choices about what's available and how it's presented is going to go a long way towards achieving that list of things. So takeaway number 2, last one, voice interface is good when it respects the person and context. All of you who are in product and UX, you know this, but there's a wider range of things to care about in terms of voice. And be flexible and responsive. There's, unlike, with mobile and with web, a click is a click, right? I'm not going to sort of click sideways and it means that I don't really mean something. It's a click. With voice, there's a lot more room for interpretation. There's words that sound alike, et cetera, et cetera. If anyone wants to talk more later, I'll tell you the story about flower and flower. It was really funny. It happened between two people. It was amazing to be there for it. I'm a language nerd, so it was amazing for me. We'll share this somehow. I have resources available. I'm not going to walk through them, of course, right now. But thank you, and thank you to Products That Count for having me here. And we'll take a few questions, I think. We have time?
We have a few minutes for questions, but thank you so much. We'll start with Arena.
Do you have any advice on how to make these things discoverable, right? So in anticipation of this talk, I actually asked Siri to read me my email, which I've never done before. And she went to the first message. She read me the subject line, do you want to go on to the next one? And I said, well, delete it. And I can't delete email. So I said, well, Siri, what can you do with email? And nothing, disconnected.
So I don't have a good answer for that right now. It's something I've racked my brain with, and it's something I want to pay attention a lot more to this year. Aside from standard marketing, especially if you're expanding a product like Jeopardy, which then you have a platform for doing, because you can advertise it with the show, et cetera, et cetera. But pure discoverability, like how does someone find out something's there without some other trigger? I don't really have a good answer for that right now. Alexa has hints on the screen displays, so it'll say like, Alexa, or try Alexa, blah 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 blah. That's so random. What are they going to? And some of it's so silly, like it's Alexa, play Taylor Swift. Well, I think people already know that it could play Taylor Swift. So I don't have a good answer for that right now. There's the mic.
Thoughts on the future of news delivery via smart speakers, smart displays?
Well, how do I separate that from the future of news? I actually think the biggest problem there is the one we're facing right now with even online, or whether you get your news from going to the Guardian or Washington Post, or you get your news from Facebook posts. I think a big part of it is who's controlling that feed, who's curating it, who decides. On Alexa, the blurbs are very short. Some of it is incredibly frustrating. So it looks like it's really interesting, and then it's just stupid. It just tells me nothing. And so I think the guy in the Georgetown T-shirt talked about how do I set preferences for my peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So I think there's one of the things I think there's a lot of growth to be had both in all sorts of digital products is how do we get more effective at enabling these systems to know our preferences. And so, start with something simple. Do I want blurbs, or do I want, the long read equivalent of something on Alexa? I know tons of people who love audiobooks. I can't stand them. I can't. They just don't hold me. I just cannot do it. I would never finish a book if I only could do audio. So I may not stick around for, 5 minutes of text-to-speech news article, but some people might. So I think it's how do we start to explore people's preferred methods of ingestion. And then some of that goes back to discovery too. Like even today, how do I have my news sources that I go to and trust, but I spend time thinking about what are they not showing me. And so it gets to really more of a content and a presentation problem than I think necessarily directly associated with the medium. Follow up? Sure.
Do you know of any group that's actually doing like an interactive model where they maybe start with a flash brief and then the person can say, hey, tell me more about
No, the question is, so a flash briefing on Alexa is when you could say, like, you can say, Alexa, good morning, and you can have it set up so it'll read certain news stories from certain sources or read you the weather, whatever. No, I don't. So the question was, is anyone playing with the model of like giving blurbs and then being able to say, tell me more about that one? I think that's a very natural sort of interaction. And certainly online, if you look at, like the front page of the New York Times, it's sort of that exact same model. You don't read a whole story on the front page. So I wouldn't be surprised to see more of that coming. But I don't know of anyone directly. Yes.
The NPR One app does a little bit of that.
Oh, cool.
NPR, it's not the same, but like you're listening and they'll say, hey, here's a blurb, click here if you want to learn more about that, and then it just pops you to the next one.
Okay. In speech, they do that?
No, it's not speech, but it's just in the news. They'll do a little briefing.
Oh, okay.
You want them more of this?
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I think there's a number of models in some of our visual interfaces that do that sort of, see more. But I think the specific thing of like, if it's running through 4 or 5 things and you're like, oh, wait, go back to and tell me more about that one. It's a very natural interaction. We tend to do a lot of spontaneous things like that with our voices, but there's some sophisticated recognition handling that has to happen to make that possible.
What's your take on, finding the balance? So when you're designing products, there's often a language barrier. You said you're a language buff, you understand that. So oftentimes the disconnect is, as a human being, you're trying to speak a machine's language, or the machine is trying to understand the human language. So where do you think there's the balance when you're trying to design products? Is the expectation for the machine to understand more conversational as a human being, or do you design with the expectation that humans should speak the machine's language?
Definitely not the latter. So one of my tenets as a longtime UX person is if your product is predicated on, if you are aiming for some sort of mass market product of some sort where it goes to, the proverbial everyone, if you start that with the assumption, people will learn to, in my book, you've already failed. You have to tap into what people already do. You have to make it feel familiar and enable them to get to some level of quick success. And language is one of the most difficult things to change. How many of you learned a second language as an adult? Yeah. How easy was that? Yeah. Some of you may be like real language, like some people do. I know a guy who like picks up another language every year, but that's just his thing. He's wired a little bit differently than the rest of us. But for most of us, we did all of our language acquisition in the first 3 to 5 years of our lives. And then our brain said, hey, we don't have to learn anymore. And we know the language, but we put all the acquisition parts to sleep. And so my general rule is you need to figure out how people talk about this and then tap into that. Does that answer your question? Okay. Yes.
So specifically talking about Alexa, do you think using a skills-based user experience limited the way it's going to expand instead of focusing on the natural language processing?
Oh, absolutely. Actually, finish that last part.
So instead of focusing on the natural language processing engine that makes it more conversational, I'd focus more on a skill-based, hey, people add more skills to kind of interact with for more use cases. Do you think that that's caused some sort of a limitation with the growth for Alexa, or you think that's?
I think it has, for the time being, skewed the growth somewhat. So I had this long, if any of you are on Twitter, I had this long thread I posted this long thread the other day talking about the important distinction between identifying a word and understanding the context that a group of words are in. Right now, a lot of things that are labeled natural language understanding are really just about using frameworks of identification to make sure that, my flower story, if I say, so here's the story. I was at a party. Someone had made lavender cookies. And I knew, the woman who made them told me that they were made with almonds. But a woman came up to this woman and said, "Is there flour in these?" And the woman said, "Yes, lavender." And she said, "I never heard of lavender flower." Now, that sounds silly, right? But then she was like, "Oh, it's a lavender flavor, the lavender flower flavor." But she was asking, "Is there wheat flour in the cookies?" And like that's not gonna, an NLU system is not going to handle that right now. But I guess the deeper answer also gets into the distinction between sort of well-constrained goals and tasks and general conversation. And that's sort of the unexplored territory right now.
Great. And we're going to take 2 more questions. So we have someone here, and then hopefully you'll stick around a little bit to answer some more.
Absolutely. Yes.
So I'm thinking about UX and onboarding to voice applications. And it's always challenging to think about that. I think a lot of people would say, well, if the application is simple enough, you don't need onboarding. But where not just the skill, but maybe the whole idea of voice as an interface is new for many people, I would suspect there would be a strong need for onboarding. And I'm curious your thoughts on sort of the current state of whether or not most people are doing that effectively, what the needs are, et cetera.
Yeah, I don't think it's happening really well right now. And one of the constraints around that is the fact that you have to use a keyword to interact with these systems. And we don't, we do get each other's attention and, in some ways. And so if Emily was talking to someone, Emily and I knew each other before today. So if Emily was talking to someone and I went up to her and I wanted to get her attention, I would say, "Hey, Emily." But I wouldn't start every sentence with, "Hey, Emily." That would be a little weird, right? So, and then when, if Emily and I were having a conversation, it might be rude of me, but I could interrupt her without having to say, Emily again, for her to go, "You want to speak to me now?" So I think that there's right now the problem is not so much onboarding, it's that we haven't, going back to your question, we haven't really tapped into natural human behaviors around voice and around speech, around conversation. But to do that, we have to solve the problem that you raised, which is how do we tell the difference between, very, very contextually constrained interactions and sort of unconstrained. Onboarding right now, sort of falls into this area of teaching people things that they shouldn't really have to be taught, and they probably won't have to know in the future. The devices do a little bit of that if you're setting up your very first Alexa device. They don't do it if you're setting up subsequent. So there's some presumption that you've learned something. But I don't think there's really a standard approach. If you do, if you get into a product that has some level of complexity, then I think you have more of an opportunity to do that onboarding in context, to use this effectively. But even there, you have to be careful. This really goes back to making sure you're using language that people are accustomed to, so that you're not having to teach them stuff, and that you're using a lot of synonyms and all this kind of stuff that goes along with that. Okay, who's got the last question? Yes.
So a lot of things that I learned today, I feel like it's really more or targeting more around the regular people who can see but also can leverage the voice as enabling. I'm really curious about your thoughts on leveraging this voice technology for the blindness, who I see a strong needs for those people. So I'm curious about your thoughts on how to create the useful products for those people and where to start.
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things that we have to look out for right now. So last year, Alexa and Google both introduced screen-based devices that featured screens. And one of the concerns, not last year because it's 2019 now, 2017, they introduced those. And one of the concerns was, would developers just sort of fall back to mobile? just the mobile way of thinking, everything go on the screen, or the web way of thinking. So you've got a 7-inch screen now. And at the same time, there was a lot of growing popularity with the original Echo and the original Google devices that were voice only within populations that had sight challenges, precisely because everything was constrained to the voice only channel. Now, also at the same time, there was a lot of outcry from the hard of hearing communities who said, well, we depend on being able to see stuff. So I think that, so there's some interesting progress in the idea of, people are starting to get used to or find things that work for them, but I don't yet see a cohesive approach to all that. And I do think it's going to, just like, there's a great book out by Kat Holmes called Mismatch. She was at Microsoft for a long time, about this legacy we've built of products that don't serve some population well. And so I think there's a lot more work to be done there. And so, yeah, again, one of the opportunities, I absolutely think you should consider, again, with it, you don't want to sort of go to that thing of I'm designing for everybody, but you certainly need to say what are the distribution of abilities across the population I'm designing for.
Great. I just want to say thank you. Great questions, and thank you very much for your time. Can we have a round of applause for Phillip?
Thank you. You've been a lovely, lovely audience. Thank you.
Thanks. And I have a Products That Counts notebook for you. Yeah, thank you very much for your time. There will be a video of the presentation on Products That Counts in probably a week and a half. So we'll give you that. And then I have a couple of housekeeping items too. So. That's great. First, we'll be sending in NPS surveys, so Net Promoter Score survey. Please tell us what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong. Would you recommend it to a friend? If yes, why? And if not, tell us why too. Because that's a great feedback. The next event is going to be talking about some of the customer feedback loops and what are the top things that you look for in the customer feedback loops, whether it's a tangible or intangible product. So that's on the 13th of February. And then also shout out. So if anyone's here looking for a position, doing a school project, or whatever it might be, you're welcome to take the mic for an abbreviated period, like 15 seconds. Great. Okay. Come on up, Joe. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joan Perlmutter-Bajorek, and I'm the founder of Women in Voice. If this talk was of interest to you and you are a woman or a non-binary or diverse in this field, we'd love to have you. I just moved back to Seattle. We're going to be doing meetups in the really soon future. So Women in Voice Seattle, we have a meetup already. We're on Twitter, LinkedIn. Please come join us. We're so excited. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. And I didn't tell you this, Joan, but the first person who gets up also gets a book. So thanks. Anybody else? A shout out. Okay. Then I just want to remind you again that Zillow is hiring. You can leave your name and email, and we'll have the recruiting team follow up with you directly. Again, thank you for the space and the food. We have the room for just about 17 more minutes, so thank you. John. Okay, come on. Okay. Okay, John too. Great, thank you. And then other than that, keep the room clean. Help yourself to a bit more to eat. And thank you again for starting the year with Products That Counts. Really appreciate it. Thanks.